HT2 errors receptors. Okay. Now, this specifically, this slide I have put just to show you that nowadays a lot of receptors are being targeted by specific ligands or drugs because they are the drugs are being modified according to the target which is to be to which a drug is to be bound. Okay, so it is generally due to the structural or chemical or genomic sequence similarity. And what is the aim of targeting the receptors? That you produce the therapeutic effect while avoiding toxicity to the nearby cells. Okay. For example, a lot of anti-cancer drugs are being, nowadays made, and they are specifically targeted to go right inside the tumor and, avoid a lot of side effects which occur normally with the traditional anti-cancer drugs which are used, So a lot many newer drugs are being synthesized first, which, like antibody drug conjugates, which simply, will target your tumor and will cause the destruction of tumor, and there will be very little bystander effects or rather the side effects. Okay. Similarly, when you give radioactive iodine, it gets concentrated inside your beta cells and specifically destroys the thyroid gland from within, and there is very little destruction outside that area. Okay, fine. So similarly, you can tag certain radioactive ligands. A lot many radioactive ligands are being used for normally for diagnostic purposes also. As you see in the coronary angiography or other, if you want to see the scans of KUB scans. Okay, so so that was about the receptors, types of receptors. Now we shift our focus to how do we classify these receptors. Okay. So now these receptors are basically classified into four main families, and that mainly depends upon location of their receptors. So these four main families you see, the receptors belonging to type 1, 2 and 3 are located onto the cell membrane, whereas type 4 type of receptors are located either into the cell nucleus or in the cytoplasm. Okay, so the four types of receptor families are basically the receptors with intrinsic channels, the G protein coupled receptors, enzymatic receptors, or the intracellular receptors. Okay, fourth type intracellular, as I said, they can be either intracytoplasmic or intranuclear receptors. Okay, so first we'll study what are G protein coupled receptor. Normally, in short abbreviated form, we call them as GPCRs. Okay, so it is the largest family of the receptors to which the drug binds. Okay, as you can see here, these receptors are like a snake, like they have 7 transmembrane domains. Okay, to which a drug binds. So this is a drug ligand, let's say adrenaline, which will bind to its receptor. Okay, G protein coupled receptor. So the receptor binding site is, you can see it is on the membrane actually, just outside the membrane. Okay, so and inside of the cell will contain a G protein which is bound to it. Okay, now this G protein is composed of three subunits, alpha, beta and gamma subunit. Okay, so what are G protein coupled receptor? First thing, they are 7 membrane spanning segments, also called as serpentine or heptahelical receptors, and one of the intracellular loops is larger than others and provides the scaffolding for binding of G protein. Okay, so G protein is a unit which gets activated when a ligand or a drug binds to its site on this GPCR. Okay, so what is a G protein? So it is a membrane protein comprising 3 subunits alpha, beta and gamma. And remember, this classification of now the G proteins are classified into various categories as GS, GI, GQ, G0 and G12. It is based upon alpha subunit of G protein. Okay, so beta gamma subunit have no role in the classes or sub classification of these receptors. It is the alpha subunit which helps to classify these receptors into further subtypes like GS, GI, GQ, G0. Okay, so like GS, S, you can easily remember it causes S for stimulation. So it causes stimulation of adenyl cyclase. Okay, I is inhibition. It causes inhibition of adenyl cyclase. Okay, G not O, or you can remember at G not. Not means no action. Okay, so it will inhibit the calcium ion channel. Okay, that is how you can easily remember. GQ, it would stimulate, generally stimulate the Q, the calcium activity inside the cell. So it activates phospholipase C and subsequently increases the entry of the calcium ions, or it increases the calcium ion concentration within the cells. Okay, G12 by 13, it increases certain, exchange factors within the cells. So it's not so important, but for you, at least you should remember these four subtypes, that is GS, GI, GQ, and G naught. Okay, so remember in the previous slide I showed you alpha subunit, which possesses this GTPase activity, as I told you. So normally in an inactive state, let's say when there is no ligand, so just imagine there is no ligand is there. So normally in an inactive state, the G protein coupled receptor normally have GDP bound to it. Okay. As soon as a drug binds to it, that is an agonist binds to it, it causes a conformational change in the receptor. Okay. And what happens, that is GDP is then replaced by GTP, and this alpha subunit, as you can see, dissociates from the receptor. Okay, so this alpha subunit now has GTP bound to it. It will dissociate from the receptor, and this dissociated subunit will further activate various secondary messengers, as I'll tell you shortly. And beta gamma subunit, normally, it is responsible for the controlling the trafficking of this G protein coupled receptor. And sometimes, very importantly, you can say it also has role in opening of potassium ion channels in the heart, specifically with acetylcholine. But usually beta gamma subunit, has limited role. It is the alpha subunit, as I told you previously, which leads to the action of such of an agonist. Okay, so now when an agonist occupies this G protein receptor, the alpha subunit dissociates and then it activates its target effector protein. Okay, now this effector protein can either be an enzyme, that is an adenyl cyclase, or a guanyl cyclase, or a phospholipase C. Okay, or it can activate certain ion channels, okay, like the calcium ion channel or sodium ion channel. Okay, now importantly, lot many drugs, like, all the hormones and various neurotransmitters, they activate, they bind to G protein coupled receptors, and activate adenylate cyclase enzyme. So this catalyzes the formation of intracellular cyclic AMP, and this cyclic AMP then further activates protein kinase A and controls the further, action of the drug. Okay, so this is like simply say adrenaline, it will bind to its receptor, this outside of the cell, this is inside. Okay, so when adrenaline binds to this GS protein, G protein coupled receptor, it stimulates this GS. So S means, as I told you, stimulation of adenyl cyclase. When adenyl cyclase is activated, it will lead to formation of the ATP, and ATP will then be converted into cyclic AMP, and cyclic AMP will then activate, protein kinase A, and this protein kinase A leads to phosphorylation, of various proteins inside the cell, or and it can activate various enzymes, like adrenaline, it by acting through this beta 2 receptors further, this protein kinase A, will be further leading to, within the liver, it will be leading to phosphorylation reactions, and it would lead to the this glycogenolysis. Okay, So, so in a nutshell, because we don't have limited time, so I'll not go into the detailed functioning of G protein coupled receptors. But here you can see in this slide, so G, just see that when a drug binds, activates this to its receptor, it activates the G proteins which couple to either adenyl cyclase or phospholipase C, and these further reactions are seen. Protein kinase A is formed. When phospholipase C is activated, it causes the breakdown or the release of phosphatidylinositol 4,5 biphosphate from the cell membrane, and that is further converted into inositol triphosphate or diacylglycerol. Now these, importantly, see, these are known as second messenger. Okay, what is the first messenger? First messenger is the drug itself. What are second messengers? Second messengers are the substances which are produced after the receptor activation. Okay, so these second messengers, and further, like calcium ion, it is called as the third messenger. Okay, so like that, you also have the fourth messenger also. Okay, so importantly, you must remember that G protein coupled receptors, they lead to certain formation of the secondary messengers, and these secondary messengers form depend upon which type of G protein is activated. If it is GS, it is adenyl cyclase, cyclic AMP. If it is GQ, it is phospholipase C. If it is GI, there will be inhibition of adenyl cyclase. Okay, fine. So G protein itself can lead to, opening of certain ion channels also. Okay, fine. So like this can be seen here, they can also lead to activation, like, when the muscarinic receptor M2 receptor is stimulated in the heart. So it leads to opening of the potassium ion channels. Okay. So that leads to hyperpolarization in the heart and, subsequently the bradycardia. Okay. So it's not always that G protein coupled receptor will act through these enzymes. They can also exert their action through the ion channels also. All right. Now, second class of, or the second family of receptors are known as enzymatic receptors. So normally, what we mean by enzymatic receptors is that normally this enzyme is tyrosine kinase, although it can be serine threonine kinase, but we'll not go into such details. So for your purpose, you just remember that there are certain receptors to which a drug binds, and these receptors themselves have intracellularly tyrosine kinase domain attached to them. So as soon as a drug binds to these receptors, the tyrosine kinase domain, which is embedded within the intracellular side of these receptors, gets activated, and this further, leads to the further events like, like the insulin binds to its receptor. What importantly you have to remember is that this is the most common class of receptor which undergoes receptor dimerization. Okay, so normally when an insulin binds to its receptor, so a nearby receptor also, will go and bind to this receptor, and there will be two receptors simultaneously will act together. Okay, so there will be receptor dimerization. This is the most common class of receptor which undergoes receptor dimerization. Okay, similarly, atrial natriuretic peptide or BNP, CNP, these growth factors, they bind to their own receptors. Okay, but remember here the exception is the growth factors normally, uh, there is one exception in growth factor like transforming growth factor beta that does not have tyrosine kinase domain linked to it. Rather, this binds to serine threonine kinase. It is, I'm just telling you for students who want to solve certain MCQs. So there is one exception. So how you can just remember this, what are the drugs which bind to these tyrosine kinase linked receptors? So you can simply remember by this mnemonic. So GF in Nickers or simply growth factors, IN is insulin and N is natriuretic peptides. Okay. Similarly, there is a mnemonic for drugs which bind to enzymatic receptors which do not have intracellular tyrosine kinase. Rather, when a drug binds to these receptors, the tyrosine kinase goes and then it is floating in the cytoplasm, and it gets activated when a drug binds to the receptor. Okay, so the receptor itself does not incorporate this intracellular, but we will not go into such details. Okay, so the third class of receptors are the intracellular receptors. As I told previously, they can either be situated within the nucleus or within the cytoplasm. So importantly, the drugs or the ligands must first enter the cells, okay, as opposed to the previous class of receptors which I have told you. So importantly, these receptors have a DNA binding domain. Okay. So whenever a drug will bind to its receptor, normally like steroid receptors, they lie in the cytoplasm. So they are normally in the inactive state, and as soon as mineralocorticoid or a glucocorticoid binds to this inactive receptor, this receptor complex gets dissociated from certain proteins which keep it in inactive state like heat shock protein. So just leave that apart. So where this complex then migrates to the nucleus, and it then activates steroid responsive domain within the nucleus. So ultimately, whether it is cytoplasmic receptor का मैक्सिमल इफेक्ट आ जाएगा. ठीक है. सो लाइक प्रेडनिसोलोन का 5 मिलीग्राम का टेबलेट लिया तो उसका मैक्सिमल इफेक्ट आने में आपको मिनिमम इट विल टेक सर्टेन डेज. ओके, 2-3 डेज. और मैक्सिमल रिस्पॉन्स तो जाके 2 हफ्ते बाद आएगा. ठीक है. सो this class of receptor, slow acting class of receptors. Okay, now certain intranuclear receptors are the drug goes and their receptor goes and binds. Sorry for that. Goes. So thyroid hormones and retinoid receptors are exclusively located within the nucleus, whereas steroid receptors, whether mineralocorticoid, glucocorticoid, or vitamin D like calcitriol, they are present within the cytoplasm itself. So remember this thing. It is the slowest acting class of receptors. Maximal response manifests in days. Similarly, their side effects also are delayed in onset. Okay, so like steroids, you must have heard they lead to weakening of the bones. So it does not, ये नहीं कि आपने 2 गोली खाई और आपकी bones weak हो गई. Okay, so this happens when you continuously take prednisolone like 5 milligrams for 6 months. So after 6 months, you will see that your bones become weak, like you were earlier easily able to, cover certain distance. But now when you cover same distance, you find you have pain in your legs. Why? Because you had taken the steroid for previous 6 months, and now, it has led to weakening of the bones. It leads to osteoporosis. All right. So both the action of such kind of drugs, like, like you take thyroid hormone. So commonly patient has, hypothyroid patient takes thyroxine or T4. So it is said that the maximal effect of thyroxine occurs around 2 to 4 weeks. Okay, so that is why any changes if you want to make in the dose of such hormone, that is thyroxine, you should do ideally after 4 weeks when the drug has exerted its maximal action. Okay, it's not like that you take the drug and it will exert its action. Okay, so now the last class of this receptor family are called as ionotropic receptor. That means here the receptor themselves incorporate ion channel within themselves. So this is the class of receptor which is involved in fast synaptic transmission. So importantly, this is the fastest acting class of receptor. So please remember that. Slowest acting class of receptor was the this intracellular receptors, mostly the intranuclear receptors, and the fastest acting class of receptors is the ion channel receptors. Okay, mind you, G protein coupled receptor responses also occurred within, they can occur within seconds or, they are also very fast. But ionotropic receptor response occur within milliseconds. Okay, so it is the fastest acting class of receptor. So what are the examples you are very frequently asked in your exam? That what are the examples of such inotropic receptors? So they can be either nicotinic or GABA A or 5-HT3 receptors. So you see the commonly a nicotinic receptor, as you can see here clearly, to which acetylcholine in the higher dose can itself bind to. Normally acetylcholine in lower dose binds to muscarinic receptor, but in higher dose it can go and stimulate the nicotinic receptor also, and it's normally, responsible for maintaining your muscle contraction. So these receptors have the 5 subunits alpha, beta, gamma, and certain transmembrane domains form a pore through which the ions can enter, either the sodium ion or the calcium ion, Fine. So similarly, you can see GABA A receptor, so which allows the influx of the chloride ion, and that is why, GABA A receptors, lead to hyperpolarization of the cell and maintain an inhibitory state. All right. So till now, what we have studied, that pharmacodynamics incorporates basically how a drug binds to its receptor, okay, and where are the receptors located, and what are the different types of receptor families, okay, and how does a drug exert its action, whether by kindly one of you please mute yourself. Okay, so next important part of pharmacodynamics is how do you then quantify your responses, you know so how can you quantitate that a drug binding to a receptor is exerting its maximal effect, or is it exerting, a kind of effect exerted by partial agonist, okay, or how can you analyze whether your given drug is an antagonist or whether it is an inverse agonist. Okay, so for this you have to know that the receptors in our body normally exist in three states. One is state is called active state, which is denoted by Ra. So when a drug binds preferentially to this Ra state of the receptor, so equilibrium shifts towards. Okay, so normally the two important states are this active and inactive state. Okay, so if a drug favors this active state, so obviously it will lead to stimulation of the receptor. Okay, so this reaction shows that normally, what happens when a drug binds to its receptor. So this K1 denotes the rate of forward reaction. So drug receptor complex is formed, and then an effect or response is afterward that, the drug receptor complex. This will depend, how long will drug get associated with its receptor will depend, as I told you previously, whether the interaction between drug and receptor is weak or it is strong. Okay, whether it is through hydrogen bonds or it is through covalent bonds. Okay, so if it is a reversible weak interaction, so the drug will then immediately dissociate back. So K2 denotes the rate of backward reaction. Okay, so it will dissociate back into the the original state drug, and the drug will get eliminated or metabolized, and receptor will be resynthesized or replaced back onto their place. Okay, so at any time, the response, whenever you give a drug, the response depends on equilibrium between drug and receptor complex. Okay, so in the previous slide, if you give an agonist, it will shift the equilibrium towards the active state of receptor. Okay. Now, partial agonists also favor the. Now, why do partial agonists never lead to a maximal response as seen by agonists? Because partial agonists, as you can see, they do favor the active state. That is why you see